guys, I'm gonna do an ad for a company on this video here, and it would mean a lot to me, both financially and from like a you guys appreciate me standpoint, if you clicked the link and maybe signed up using it. See, they booked me for a 12-month spot, and they pay really well. However, because of diminished response from my fans using their links, they've canceled like 8 of the months, and it's a lot of money I'm losing. So if you guys could take like 30 seconds to follow this link, sign up, I don't know, maybe make a doctor's appointment, that's up to you. But just like at the very least, hammer the link, because if I can rebook these 9 spots, well, it'll help me out a lot. Here's to hoping they don't see this, but who knows, maybe they will. And all I'm really doing is trying to send people to the platform, but yeah, help me please. The Chunin exams, one of the most prolific tournament arcs of all time. A 30+ episode arc that features 20+ fights, with 13 of those fights being one-on-ones. But as I'm rewatching this arc right now for my Naruto reaction series that you can find in my 4th wall in the description below, I realized something. Even though I've been talking about Naruto as a show and a manga for 6+ years, I've never sat down and ranked any of the fights from Naruto. I haven't ranked fights from individual arcs, fights from individual characters, my favorite fights from the entirety of Shippuden or part 1. When it comes to the fights in Naruto, I really haven't talked about them at all. And thus, as I was rewatching all of the preliminary fights and now some of the final fights of the Chunin exams, I realized, man, is this arc incredible, but is there some disparity between these fights? See, because, well, yes, the Chunin exams arc as a whole is incredible, and it has some of the highest highs out of any arc in all of anime and manga. At the same time, boy, oh boy, does it have some stinkers. And thus today, I want to go over the 13 one-on-ones that we get over the course of the Chunin exams. And I want to break down once and for all which one of these fights was the best and which were the worst. Because today we're talking all the fights in the Chunin exams, ranked and explained. But before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the 4th wall link in my description below. We're on the Temari versus Shikamaru, so love is in the wind. Let's be honest with ourselves here. You've been putting off a doctor's appointment for way too long. Whether it's an injury you got playing recreational sports or a toothache you've been trying to ignore for months now, you've been putting off going to see a healthcare professional because going to see a healthcare professional is kind of a pain. Well, that's where the sponsor of today's episode, ZocDoc, comes in. See, ZocDoc is a free website and app that helps you book high-quality in-network doctors with ease. Yeah, you heard me right. In-network appointments with over 150,000 healthcare professionals across all 50 states. Yeah, up there too in Alaska. And whether you're looking for dermatology, dentistry, primary care, or eye care, or any of the other 200+ specialties offered on ZocDoc, you can easily search by specialty or symptom to find a healthcare professional who's right for you. But maybe you don't even need to see a doctor in person. They offer video consultations as well. But if you do want to be face-to-face with your doctor, that can happen. And as every healthcare professional on ZocDoc can be reviewed by the patients who go to them, you can read those verified patient reviews to figure out exactly the kind of doctor that you're heading to. Maybe they hate small talk as much as you, or they root for the same football team as you. And when you found a healthcare professional that you believe is the perfect fit, you can click the book instantly. No phone tag, no waiting around, just, oh, they're free tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Cool, I'm going. And appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, with most happening between 24 and 72 hours after booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So what are you waiting for? Stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/NCHammer to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/NCHammer to get those creaks and ailments checked out today. This message is sponsored by ZocDoc. So, like I said earlier, we have 13 fights to rank today. The 10 preliminary fights and the 3 fights that we got from the final rounds. And thus, in last place, at number 13 on our list, ranking all of the fights of the Chunin exams, we have Choji versus Dosu. This fight, which flies in the face of saving the best for last, as it was the last fight of the preliminary rounds, is awful. Not only is it a fight between two side characters, one of which who dies immediately after this fight trying to fight Gaara during a full moon, but also the entire fight lasts less than a minute. 10-10 versus Temari, which is just one panel in the manga, lasts longer than this manga canon fight. And that's because this fight is just Choji trying to defeat a guy that he fought and lost to in the Forest of Death by doing basically the exact same thing. See, at this moment in time, literally, the only partial transformation jutsu that Choji had access to was Human Tank, a jutsu where he puffs himself up into a big ball and then spins at somebody. However, if you're faster than, I don't know, a car going 30 miles an hour, this jutsu is completely and totally irrelevant. Tie that into the fact that Choji is afraid of Dosu using his sound gauntlets to knock him out, and therefore he pulls his head into his Human Tank form. After making literally one pass at Dosu, Choji launches himself into a wall, at which point Dosu just punches him and goes, hey, your body's 70% water, sound waves travel better through water than they do through the air. And then Choji is knocked into irrelevancy. And that's it. That's the whole fight. We've spent more time talking about this fight than the entire length of this fight in the anime. Team 10 doesn't get relevant until Asuma dies and Dosu literally turns into bloody sand rain. If any fight in the story deserved the one manga panel treatment, it was probably this one. But speaking of the one manga panel treatment, up next at number 12, ranking all of the fights from the Chunin exams, we have Temari versus 10-10. Like I literally just said, in the manga, this fight takes place over the course of one panel. After Sakura and Ino's fight finishes up, and Sakura and Ino are having a debrief about their friendship up in the rafters, we flash down to the arena and we see that 10-10 has had her back cracked over Temari's fan. We don't see how it happened, we don't see why it happened, we didn't see the beginning of the fight, we just see the end. But in the anime, we actually get, I mean, it's not a good fight, but we get a better fight than we get in the manga. It's 2.5 times longer than the fight we get from Choji and Dosu. See, because in this fight between 10-10 and Temari, we see that 10-10 is desperately outmatched. And a battle between throwable weapons and wind, unfortunately, wind wins every single time. However, we do get to see, at least at that moment, what 10-10 considers to be her ultimate jutsus, which includes jumping into the air and surrounding herself in one scroll filled with weapons to throw at an opponent, and if that doesn't work, she'll try it with 2. And if 2 scrolls filled with weapons thrown at your opponent doesn't work against the strongest wind style user in the world at that moment in time, well, don't worry, all of the weapons I threw were attached to strings. Unfortunately, these weapons being attached to strings doesn't make them invulnerable to wind. You know what else isn't invulnerable to wind? Apparently my body, because I'm caught in a vortex so violent and so powerful that you can't hear my screams. See, say what you will about 10-10 versus Temari. The way that the fight ends is one of the most hardcore moments in the early days of Naruto. Watching 10-10 silently scream inside of a vortex just for her to land on Temari's fan, awesome. And therefore, while the fight itself obviously isn't good, you gotta give some props to the anime team for making something out of nothing. But since we're talking about string-based fights, let's get to our next entry. Number 11 on our list, ranking all of the fights from the Chunin exams, is Shikamaru versus Kid. The only reason this fight is even remotely fun is because we get Shikamaru's theme music during it. Outside of that, this fight sucks. Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was gonna say I like Shikamaru as much as the next guy, but I don't. He's a fine character. He's better in Boruto than he is in Naruto, for being entirely real. Even then, Amado and Kashin Koji are doing like the majority of the heavy lifting from like a governmental and leadership standpoint. Anyways, this is just one of the early entries in the long history of Shikamaru only ever fighting against women. Don't believe me? Kin, Toyuya, Temari, even he jokes about it. But the entirety of this fight is built around the idea that Kin's kit is using sound-based genjutsu from bells that she attaches to Senbon. And then once you're under the effect of that genjutsu, you see way more Kins than there actually is, so she can slowly but surely fill you with holes from all of her Senbon. And like, I don't know. Did Senbon ever do it for anybody? Senbon were kind of cool when Haku used them, because they felt scary and powerful, but that was mostly because it was Haku using them, and Haku was an elite Jonin killer who was throwing Senbon from ice mirrors that he could travel to at the speed of light. But like, every other time that Senbon are used in combat after Haku. I roll my eyes. And like, this fight does have the cool classic Shikamaru moment where Shikamaru's backed into a corner. It looks like he's gonna lose until it's revealed that he was successful with his shadow possession jutsu. And this specific Shikamaru moment comes through the medium of him extending his shadow down the shadow of the Senbon's line. And like, well, that's all fun and good. It's the way that this fight ends that pisses me off. See, because now that Shikamaru's shadow possession is complete, he reaches into his ninja tool bag and grabs a shuriken, and he throws it at Keen, but because it's shadow possession jutsu, Keen also throws a shuriken at him. Now, ignoring for a moment that canonically, Naras don't wear their ninja tool bags in standard places to avoid issues exactly like this, the fight ends when Shikamaru leans backwards to avoid a shuriken, and Keen does the same thing because she's being controlled, but while she does it, she bonks her head into the wall. And that's what knocks her out. A light bonk on the head, like she's in a bar fight in a comedy. One of the 3 elite ninjas sent by the Hidden Sound Village, aka Orochimaru, is knocked out by bumping her head into a wall. Sure, but since we're talking about traitors sent from the Hidden Sound Village, let's get to talking about our next fight. At number 10 on our list, ranking all of the fights from the Chunin exams, we have Kankuro versus Misumi. Listen, this is probably a fight you forgot happened, because Kankuro was the least important out of all 3 of the Sand siblings, and Misumi was one of the 2 faceless traitors on Kabuto's Genin team. And while this fight is not long or important, it is objectively kind of fun. See, Misumi's whole gambit is that he doesn't have bones, really, which probably should have been the first indicator that he was working with Orochimaru. And thus the fight begins with Misumi flying in with a chop to Kankuro that Kankuro blocks. However, when Kankuro blocks the chop, Misumi kind of liquidates all of his arms and climbs onto Kankuro's back, squeezing him and telling Kankuro that if he doesn't forfeit, he'll kill him by breaking his neck. But Kankuro doesn't back down, and thus in their shadows we see Misumi cracks Kankuro's neck. But just as we think one of the Sand siblings was taken out by a literal no-name, it's revealed that Kankuro had actually replaced himself with the Black Crow. And after an exquisite ribbon floor technique from Kankuro, Black Crow, with its cracked Kankuro face still slightly intact, turns its head around and looks at Misumi, at which point it wraps its arms around Misumi and begins to squeeze. And it's this point that Kankuro delivers one of the coldest lines in the early parts of Naruto, as he tells Misumi while he screams his forfeiture that if I break all your bones, you'll be more flexible. Now, like I said, this fight is not important and it's about a minute and a half long, but it once again really enforced just how scary the Sand siblings were. Even the ones that seemed afraid of Gaara were still homicidal maniacs. And even though we as readers and viewers didn't know Misumi and knew that he was a traitor, it still felt reassuring to see somebody from Konoha defeat somebody from the Hidden Sand. But that is what they wanted us to think. And thus Kankuro and Misumi get our number 10 spot. But listen, I know a lot of you are scratching your heads. You're waiting for me to say one fight. You're wondering how it got up this high. Because after all, if it was up to you, this would be the last place fight from the Chunin exams, right? Well, I'm sorry, but if you think that, you're wrong, because, well, yes, our next fight is that fight you're thinking of, but no, it is not the worst fight from the Chunin exams. In fact, it's a lot better than you remember. And thus, coming up at number 9 on our list, ranking all of the fights of the Chunin exams, we have Sakura versus Ino. Honestly, it could be higher than this. This is a good fight. The first 30 seconds of this fight is just straight infighting taijutsu. Sakura and Ino are just throwing mitts and what is some of the most compelling and straightforward boxing we've ever seen in Naruto. Well, I guess it would be kickboxing, but still, obviously tons of martial arts are displayed by tons of different characters in Naruto. Sakura vs. Ino is a pure kickboxing bout. And well, obviously, yes, the fight itself is filled with backstory about Sakura and Ino's childhood, but like, is that such a bad thing? Oh, the establishment of lore over these 2 characters and how their friendship has changed over the course of the years. Yeah, I don't want that. And listen, I'm right there with you. I wish the change in their friendship wasn't as tied to Sasuke as it is. But at the end of the day, this fight is about seeing which of these 2 best friends who have known each other since they were children has become stronger. They're facing each other as ninjas. And I get it. Neither of of them have a flashy, cool jutsu to use over the course of this fight. Ino obviously hits Sakura with a mind transmission jutsu, and Sakura is able to override Ino in her brain, kicking her out, which kind of makes the only real usage of an actual jutsu in this entire fight a moot point, but it doesn't make the fight any less compelling. Sakura uses her clone jutsu, baits Ino with two of them, and then hits her so hard she tumbles across the ground 30 meters. This is a knockdown, drag-out girl fight that literally has Ino cutting off her hair to use her own form of shadow possession jutsu that ends with the two of them knocking each other out with corresponding right hooks. Listen, if you go back and you watch this fight and you still look at it with animosity in your heart, it's because you either hate Sakura, Ino, or both of them. You can't both say you want Naruto to return to an era when people were actually ninjas and also say that Ino and Sakura is a bad fight because neither of them turned into a chakra mech at some point in time. Now, is this the best fight in the Chunin exams? No, I'm not delusional, but it's definitely not the worst. And for that, it gets our number 9 spot. And honestly, if you wanted to argue that it's better than our number 8 spot, I couldn't fault you, because coming up at number 8 on our list ranking all of the fights of the Chunin exams, we have Sasuke versus Yoroi. Now listen, this fight does feature one of the big 3, that is to say Sasuke, and this is back when Sasuke was a fun, compelling, and not annoying character. And while this fight is hampered by the fact that Sasuke is fighting against Yoroi, Kabuto's other faceless teammate, it's still a fair amount of fun. Mostly because Yoroi, for some reason, has the crazy broken ability of chakra absorption, something usually reserved for either Samehada, Rinnegan, or Karma Mark wielders. And therefore, when Sasuke starts busting out some Brazilian jiu-jitsu to lock up Yoroi's leg and try and get him to tap out, Yoroi takes his hand and begins to suck out Sasuke's chakra, which is obviously not good considering the fact that he's already having issues with his chakra and the curse mark. And that's kind of the backbone of this fight. Sasuke struggles to keep the curse mark in check. However, after Yoroi spends a little bit of time sucking out Sasuke's chakra out of his forehead, Sasuke's able to pull off the classic little brother defense and kick him off. And after regaining his composure and dodging a couple of, well, they kind of look like Chidori strikes from Yoroi, Sasuke pulls off the first ever lion barrage we see from him, which apparently he copied from Rock Lee over the course of their fight. Now obviously mid-lion's barrage, the curse mark begins to encroach on Sasuke's face, but in a relatively hype moment he's able to draw it back in and kick off his lion's barrage, spiking Yoroi into the ground with a fatal spinning kick. And this moment's cool because A, we're seeing Sasuke overcome the curse of the curse mark, and B, we're starting to see Sasuke copy other people's moves using his Sharingan. But speaking of members of the big 3 fighting against no-names, let's get to our next spot. At number 7 on our list, ranking all of the fights of the Chunin exams, we have Naruto versus Kiba. Listen, if we're being real, if this fight didn't feature Naruto, it's like bottom 4. Like, the reason this fight is good is because it showcases Naruto's ability to use the transformation technique at a high level. Obviously, Kiba, from a strength and speed perspective, is just much stronger and faster than Naruto at this moment in time. His taijutsu is better, he has Akamaru as an assistant, but because of Naruto's ability to use the shadow clones and the transformation technique, he's able to essentially get a battle IQ leg up on Kiba, displayed when he turns himself into Akamaru just to bite Kiba when he least expects it, or to turn into Kiba to trick Kiba after he uses beast mimicry into attacking Akamaru. And like, seeing that progress from our main character is what makes this fight worthwhile. However, from like a purely fight perspective, this is not a good one. Ignoring for a fact that this fight happens either directly before or directly after Gaara vs. Rock Lee, I can't remember which, and therefore is what we like to call in the industry a budget saver episode, where the PNG of Naruto is slid through the air as Kiba fang over fangs him. This entire fight is just Kiba doing the same thing over and over and over again, and Naruto getting back up. It's fang over fang, throw a smoke bomb, and then fang over fang, and then throw another smoke bomb, and fang over fang. And then after Naruto turns into Kiba and tricks Kiba into knocking out Akamaru, Kiba just proceeds to by himself lay it on thick on Naruto, speed blitzing him time and time again. And it's not until Naruto farts in Kiba's face that he does the only cool thing he does over the course of this entire fight, which is, I believe, his first ever Uzumaki barrage, a copied rendition of what he saw from Sasuke and Rock Lee. But a fight doesn't have to be long or feature important characters to be cool, which is why next up on our list, at number 6, ranking all of the fights from the Chunin exams, we have Zaku versus Shida. In a classic example of a fight being better in the manga than it is in the anime, this fight is still a lot of fun in the anime. See, because it's really not until this fight that we understand what kind of timing Shino was on. That timing, well, is buggy. See, because after Shino tanks an air slicer from Zaku, he gets up and we see climbing out of his face, his eyes, and his trench coat an army of beetles. And then we see an additional army of beetles charging Zaku from behind. But Zaku only has one functional arm, because Sasuke, while under the control of his curse mark, broke both of his arms. And yet Zaku flings his more injured arm out of his sling and points it towards the oncoming onslaught of insects, while keeping his other hand firmly trained on Shino. But when he goes to blow away Shino and the insects, rather what he blows away are his own arms. See, in the anime, well, chakra simply vents out of his elbows. In the manga, one of Zaku's arms blows clean off, and it's revealed that Zaku never stood a chance, because the second he came into contact with Shino, Shino jammed his air tubes filled with beetles. And after this moment, Shino slides behind Zaku and whispers to him, "This is what a real trump card looks like," as he backhands him into oblivion. Or I should say, backhands him into becoming an Edo Tensei sacrifice. And thus, while this fight is short and sweet, it is hype, it is gory, it is well written, it showcases a new and interesting character in Shino. And for all those reasons, it gets number 6 on our list. But enough about the preliminaries, Nick. We haven't talked about any of the fights from the finals yet. And you're right, we haven't. Until now, because out of the 3 fights that we do get from the finals, there is one that is much worse than the other 2, and that's our next spot. And therefore, coming up at number 5 on our list, ranking all of the fights from the Chunin exams, we have Sasuke versus Gaara. This fight is fun, but it's also barely a fight. Like the first minute is. The first minute of this fight is Sasuke tapping into the taijutsu that he copied from Rock Lee when Rock Lee used his high-speed movement in his battle against Gaara. And thus, like, for pretty much a minute straight, we see Sasuke straight up jumping Gaara, because Sasuke was obviously able to successfully copy the high-speed movement of Rock Lee, which is able to transcend the speed of Gaara's sand defense. And I mean, Sasuke is running Gaara's mitts. He's cracking Gaara's sand armor, Rock Lee's watching on, saying it's like watching himself fight, and everything Gaara tries to do defensively, Sasuke slips through. But the most impressive thing that Sasuke does, being running laps around Gaara until eventually he slides in between Gaara and his sand, grabs him by his shirt, and hits him with a Muay Thai knee into the stomach. However, unfortunately, that's when Sasuke stops fighting a man and starts fighting an orb of sand, because immediately after getting a knee to the stomach, Gaara shells up in his dome of sand, his perfect defense. And while we do get some pretty cool and well-animated moments of Sasuke trying to find a way to break into the sand orb and having to dodge the spikes that are counterattacking, really, all of it builds up towards the reveal of the thing that Sasuke's been working on for the last 2 weeks, his Chidori. And after charging up his Chidori while standing on the wall of the arena and ripping it to shreds while running at the sand dome, we get to see just how deadly this technique is, as Sasuke weaves past sand spikes and delivers the Chidori into Gaara's perfect defense, punching through it and cutting into Gaara's shoulder. And while Gaara lashes out with a partially transformed Shukaku's arm, Sasuke is able to dodge it, and unfortunately it's kind of there that the fight ends. Now obviously, in both the dub and sub, we get Gaara's reaction to seeing his blood, which delivers some of the most blood-curdling voice acting ever heard in anime before, and that is an incredible moment. However, on account of the fact that this fight, at least so far as it goes within the confines of the Chunin exams, does not have a definitive end, it's kind of hard to put it above the other fights from the finals that do. But if you wanted to put this fight higher, genuinely couldn't blame you. But as we're talking about fights from the finals, we might as well talk about another fight from the finals that did actually have an end, because coming up at number 4 on our list, ranking all of the fights of the Chunin exams, we have Temari versus Shikamaru. Now this is a Shikamaru fight I can get behind. Well, the fight itself isn't exactly high octane. It's kind of just Temari blowing slashing wind at Shikamaru, who's hiding behind a tree. It is this fight that truly cements once and for all that when Shikamaru is given a little bit of time, he can cook up a plan that uses the environment around him to win fights that otherwise he probably shouldn't. See, because in this fight we see Temari immediately identifying that there is a limit to how much Shikamaru can stretch his shadow. And thus she draws an actual line in the dirt, a line that she immediately believes Shikamaru cannot cross. But as shadows lengthen and Shikamaru derobes himself and attaches it to kunai to create parachutes that can extend his shadows, it becomes apparent that Shikamaru is trying to use his shadow to push Temari towards a certain place. And that certain place is the hole that Naruto dug up in his battle against Neji. And thus, right as Temari believes she's out of range from Shikamaru's shadow and is about to use a shadow clone, she falls under the effects of shadow possession jutsu, as Shikamaru was able to weave his shadow through the ground in order to grab her from an angle she could not see. However, after taking Temari hostage, rather than forcing her to forfeit, he himself forfeits, claiming that all of this had become a gigantic headache and that he no longer had enough chakra to truly finish this fight. Now, was he actually out of chakra, or was he simply making a long play to make the mean blonde like him? I can't say, but he did accomplish the latter. But since talking about our favorite battle of the sexes fights from the Chunin exams, let's go to our next spot. Coming up at number 3 on our list, ranking all of the fights of the Chunin exams, we have Neji versus Hinata. This is a good fight, a great fight even, probably the most underrated fight in all of the Chunin exams. See, not only is there obviously a lot of weight behind this fight, as these two cousins and technical genetic half-siblings who are split between the main and branch families because their fathers were identical twins, battle it out with each other to see which side of the family is truly superior. This fight also takes time to dive deep into Hinata's backstory, as we learn about the pressure that her father and head of the clan Higashiyuka is putting on her to be the best gentle fist user, and how she's been replaced by her genius little sister Hanabi. This fight is also really the first chess move that we see from Kishimoto to set up a romance between Hinata and Naruto. Because as Neji tries to degrade her with his words, Naruto stands up for her, giving her the confidence to steel her resolve and fight against her cousin. And honestly, when this fight does start, these two start, I guess you can't really call it boxing because their palms are open, but like, gentle fist boxing. And I mean, in a fight between two taijutsu specialists, what else would you expect? But the punches they throw feel heavy, and as they're deflected, chakra fires from their hands to give you a sense of the gravity of what being hit by this kind of attack would do to you. Not to mention, because this is a fight between two gentle fist users, we also get exposition on what gentle fist is, learning about the chakra network, tenketsu points, and how Gentle Fist is able to target them. And even though in the beginning of this fight things look as though they're going well for Hinata, Neji is eventually not only able to shut off the chakra flow to her hands, but also begins striking at her heart with palm strikes. And yet, even though Hinata is dripping blood out of her mouth and has lost the ability to channel chakra into her palms and therefore use Gentle Fist, because of the inspiration that she feels from Naruto's words of encouragement, she stands up time and time again to face her cousin. And yet, even though she's being as brave as she's ever been before, unfortunately, that bravery still falls short in the face of massive talent. But still, when the match ends, Hinata is on her feet. But as Neji tries to kill Hinata after the bell has been rung, we get an incredible moment of all of the Jonin stepping in to hold him still. And yet, even though his final blow never lands on Hinata, her heart stops. And this fight between cousins literally ends with Neji killing his cousin. And well, yes, eventually she is brought back to life. This fight serves as an incredible way to stoke the flame of hatred inside of Naruto for Neji's ideology. And thus it is not only a very fun, but also important and weighty fight that is truly one of the most important parts of the backbone of the Chunin exams. In fact, without this fight, the next spot on our list wouldn't have been nearly as important. Because at number 2 on our list, ranking all of the fights from the Chunin exams, we have Naruto versus Neji. You want to talk about important fights? This is an important fight. And really, technically, the only real fight that happens during the final part of the Chunin exams. Now, I literally just finished watching this fight in my Naruto reaction series, and it absolutely holds up. See, not only does this fight literally span 3 episodes, but it also opens with Naruto throwing a bunch of kunai at Neji, and Neji literally catches one of the kunai, flips it upside down, and catches another one of the kunai with the circle part at the end of the kunai he already caught. Which should tell you the exact kind of timing that Neji was on when he entered into this battle against Naruto. But the fight's not even really the most important thing that happens over the course of this fight. See, because it's over the course of this fight that we get Neji's backstory. And from Neji's backstory, we not only get exposition about the Hyuga family and how it's split between a main family and a branch family, but we also learn about the Hyuga incident. The night when Hinata was kidnapped by shinobi from the Hidden Cloud who came to broker a peace deal with Konoha, and how that led to Hisashi Hyuga, Neji's father, having to sacrifice himself for Hayashi Hyuga. We also learned about the curse seal placed on the forehead of all of the members of the side branch, and how members of the main branch are able to use control over those curse seals to control the side branch. Not to mention that over the course of this fight, we truly begin to see Naruto develop the ideological stance that he would stick with for the rest of his story. That with hard work, you can become anything, even if your destiny says otherwise. But also, the fight itself is sick. We get Neji dodging onslaughts of shadow clones, blasting them away with Gentle Fist. We get the reveal of 8 trigrams, 64 palms, as Neji shuts down 64 of Naruto's chakra points. And eventually we get Neji busting out his perfect defense, which is rotation. And obviously, all of this comes to a head as Naruto taps into the power of Kurama and begins to use his massive boost in strength and speed to overwhelm Neji, eventually engaging in a power clash with Neji that launches the two of them back. However, when Neji believes he has Naruto beat, Naruto emerges from the ground and hits him with one of the hardest left uppercuts ever depicted in fictional media. And thus the idea of overcoming one's destiny is cemented. Cemented by the action of Naruto digging through the ground until his fingernails bled so that he could position himself under Neji for a righteous uppercut. But with all that said, this fight still pales in comparison to by far and away and universally agreed on best fight in the entirety of the Chunin exams. Yes, that's right, you knew it was going to be all the way up here. Coming in at number 1 on our list, ranking all of the fights in the Chunin exams, we have Rock Lee versus Gaara. This fight rips. It's so well animated for the time it came out. The frame rate is insane. Every movement from Rock Lee is ridiculously fluid. It opens with Lee fighting an uphill battle against Gaara's sand while Gaara stands completely still. And then eventually Lee hits a quintuple backflip on top of the 2 giant stone hands. My guy tells him to take them off. We get one of the most iconic moments in anime history as Rock Lee drops his weights. And then Lee just starts jumping Gaara. And the best part about it is that Gaara's sand can kind of keep up in the beginning, but eventually Rock Lee is able to overwhelm him to such a point where he's able to literally just axe kick him down into a dab. And for the first ever time, Gaara is hit. Rock Lee then literally cloud step kicks Gaara up into the air, 1 kick at a time, until he's able to front lotus him down in something that absolutely would have killed Gaara if it wasn't actually a sand clone. Because it is a sand clone, once again, Rock Lee's put on the defensive. But not for long as Rock Lee opens up to the 5th gate and starts literally juggling Gaara through the air while his sand armor cracks. And just as we think that Rock Lee is truly going to finish the fight this time as he wraps Gaara in for a reverse lotus, because 5th gate is literally shattering Rock Lee's bones as he uses it, Gaara is able to protect himself by patting the ground with sand and take advantage of Rock Lee's weakened state, shattering his arm and leg, when in actuality, he wanted to shatter all of him. And while the fight is broken up as Gaara tries to finish off Rock Lee by my guy, it's after this moment that we see that Rock Lee is still holding his fighting stance while unconscious, held up by his will and his will alone. It's one of my favorite moments in part 1 of Naruto. And therefore, for all those reasons, Gaara versus Rock Lee is the best fight that happens in the Chunin exams arc. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What are your favorite fights from this arc? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. For some reason, I woke up at 7:30 a.m. this morning, so this video got done early, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with myself for the rest of the day.